Hello, everyone. I'm Joseph Skoda, past District 33 director, and it's come with a lot of challenges, but a lot of fun and rewards throughout the time that I've been in leadership. Anyways, what I love most about it is the different people I've been meeting in our district, outside our district, around the world. But today we have one of our mover and shakers as a guest. And many of you see them on Facebook and some other interviews and maybe in your own clubs. But Jesse Brisendine, and he's an awesome guy. So, Jesse, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're coming from, what division that you represent.
Joseph, it's always a pleasure to spend time with you. And I agree. One of the great things about Toastmasters and the experience of it is all the cool people you get to meet from different clubs. And as you go into the different competitions. It's funny we're talking today, Joseph, because when I was at
Yep.
the gym this morning, I was mulling over how to be a funnier speaker, how to incorporate more humor into speaking. And I have a keynote I'm prepping for right now, and I want to add some more humor in it. And a flashback to the very first competition I was ever a part of in the humor speaking contest. I had only been a Toastmaster for 6 weeks. And
Wow.
I don't remember the guy who won, but he did a speech that felt more like a stand up skit. And it blew my mind in the sense of it really opened up the door of seeing, gosh, just what is possible in terms of speaking and being able to see the art form of speaking on display. It was so inspiring. It was so really just genuinely inspiring and again mind blowing. I'm repeating myself a couple times here because it was that impactful. And I come back to that often, right? When you're trying to find humor, when you're trying to find these little nuances of speaking, and especially incorporating the art form in it, pulling from all the various experiences and all the wonderful people I've been able to see speak in Toastmasters over the years.
It's crazy. I think I seen an accredited speaker competition 3 or 4 years ago. I think it was in Chicago, and it was a magician. A magician was speaking up there and showing different tricks of the trade and explaining what he was doing. And
Hmm.
I think he became a credit speaker that year because it was that good. He
Wow.
brought humor. You have to bring a little bit of humor into everything. I love how you say you wanted to learn how to be a funny speaker. That
Yeah.
was funny. That was funny. Now I know you've done a TED Talk a couple years ago. Tell us a little bit about the journey getting there.
Yeah, one of I had a few goals joining Toastmasters, and one of them was to eventually do a TED Talk. I'd always wanted to do it. It was kind of like the Mount Kilimanjaro for me for speaking, and I wanted to do it, and I wanted to do it right. I wanted to do it in a way that was really, I think, fully showcased again the beauty of speaking when you do it well, but in the way it helps you to really convey a message. And the journey was really something else. TED is fascinating in that it really starts with an idea, right? It's the idea we're spreading. And then an idea, as much as it sounds like a good idea in your head, like most of our ideas do, right? They always sound better in our
Of
head than when they start
course.
to come out on paper. Trying to articulate that idea is something else. And as you start to put it out, you start to formulate it, you start to put the pieces together. Again, you come back to Toastmasters because what I found is so helpful with TED is it's an 18-minute talk, which is essentially three 5 to 7 minute speeches, right?
Yep.
And I've learned that pulling those things from Toastmasters, I'm basically doing three 5 to 7 minute speeches. If I'm doing a longer 45-minute, 60-minute keynote, I'm doing 5 to 10, 3 to 5, 5 to 7 minute speeches. And each one kind of takes a life of its own. So being able to form that, put it together, have that idea, interview for it, try out for it, audition for it. And then what was so valuable is to be able to come back to my Toastmasters group and get feedback. And what was really, really cool about that is the group I was in, I've known a lot of those people from day one. And so they had seen me really come up as this, shy, timid guy sitting in the back. And I'm still sitting in the back and I'm still fairly shy, still fairly timid, except with speaking. But they knew my style. They knew kind of where I was going. They knew me well enough to really give really great feedback and really help put. And I think that's really essential with it. I've always appreciated the evaluation portion of a Toastmasters meeting because I think it's the most important because we actually get
Sure.
feedback. And a great evaluation is one that's giving really growth opportunities. It's not just saying, oh, you did so great. Joseph, I don't need to tell you how great you are. You know how great you are. I don't need to tell you how wonderful you are. You know how wonderful you are. Where
Yep.
you're going to get better is if I say, Joseph, you're so wonderful. And, if you just did this one thing a little bit better, if you pause a little bit more here, if you slowed down just by a fraction of a second and really took a moment to kind of soak in what you're about to say and then articulate it, my gosh, it would take you from a level 10 to a level 11.
Absolutely. And you're right. And I hear that. And that's why a lot of us join advanced clubs or clubs that focus on evaluations. We're never going to really grow to our full potential in our own club. Some people will and go off to do great things, become politicians or astronauts, whatever. But a lot of us need two or three clubs to keep us growing and thinking. And you're right about the evaluation portion. For a long time, I was getting those. You're doing great. You're great. And that feels good for a little while. And then, but also, we don't want to beat anyone up either. And I've been beat up in the interview. Well, I did a speech a few years ago. And here was the evaluation: you were boring and you suck.
Wow.
And I was a Toastmaster already 1 year, at least close to a year. And that made me think. I didn't have it going on like I thought I did. And obviously, that person was new and did not know how to do an evaluation. But I'm sure that's never come across to you. But tell us a little bit about mentorship and what do you do in your business and how Toastmasters has helped you.
Yeah, much of my business is doing, well, now keynotes is a big part of my business, running workshops, live events, doing trainings with groups and companies, also working with individual clients and their respective teams too. Much of what I teach is quote unquote soft skills, especially in those one-on-one settings. But it's those soft skills that I find are often some of the most essential, especially in the modern business world. The case in point, I had a client recently. They've grown their business really well. We've been working together for several years. They had an opportunity to form a strategic partnership for the professional sports team. And when this opportunity comes up, what ends up popping up for them is this imposter syndrome. Oh my goodness. And we've heard imposter syndrome kind of get kicked around in the corporate world quite a bit these days. The idea of, right, like, I maybe I don't belong here. They're going to find out I'm a fraud. They're going to figure out that I've been bluffing my way here this whole time, and somebody's going to call that bluff. We spent a lot of time really drilling down and working on confidence, working on presentation, working on how they could articulate the vision of their company and how it was going to be mutually beneficial for both parties. Long story short, they end up nailing the presentation. They secure the partnership. It opens the door to another partnership, and their business ends up growing by about 50% year over year. It's been incredible, and so much of that comes right indirectly from the work you do in Toastmasters, because I think I'm a fairly knowledgeable guy when it comes to human behavior. Being able to articulate that knowledge is a completely different thing. And then to be able to teach that knowledge to a group is an even more different thing. It's a different skill set. The thing now, Joseph, I'd love to do more than anything in the world
Yeah.
is run 2-day, multi-day workshops, to be able to start with a group and watch them come in on day one and watch them leave at the end of the next day or the final day, and see where they've grown to. It's incredible. And to be able to be in front of an audience for 8, 10 hours a day, it's not easy, and it's the most rewarding thing. And what makes that possible is being able to work on effective communication, being able to stand up there and make your points, being able to be engaging for 8 to 10 hours, right? Because everybody, the most astute audience member is going to have a moment where they're zoning off and you catch them doing
Yep.
this, right? That's really, I think, where the magic of Toastmasters comes from, is being able to learn how to engage, being able to learn how to engage different people, because Toastmasters has such a huge swath of people. You could be in a club at any given time, and you might have 3 people in that club who aren't native English speakers. You might have 2 people in the club who are completely opposite ends of the political spectrum. You might have 2 people in the club that one person's been in it for 30 years and one person's been in it for 3 months. And that's such a wonderful sampling of some of the audiences you might go out to see and interact with, if you're really looking to grow your career into doing more professional speaking and presenting like I have.
Well, that's a real good point. I do belong to a lot of international clubs right now, and I had to step up my game. I mean, I talked about being involved in different clubs as a general whole, but when you go internationally, people are looking at you. They expect more out of of you, and thanks to the Toastmasters family in the world, become just a little bit better. I wanted to ask you a little bit about competitions. I know you've competed a few times in different competitions, and this year we're doing obviously international and evaluation contests. Are you involved this year, or tell us about some of the ones you've been in the past?
Yeah, I have such a love-hate relationship with competitions. And you and I have had some conversations about that before. I think that they're so incredible in terms of, again, the exposure to speaking, and it gives you an opportunity to really up your game and be able to have that experience of being around so many talented people, and taking that, something that can start as just such a simple little speech in your club, and progressing it on and on, and working on really making it better with each iteration. And what I really love about the competitions is each level up you go, the little nuanced things become more impactful, because each of the speakers in there are going to be better and better and better. And a lot of times there's going to be, if you have 10 people speaking, all of them are going to be at the same level of you, if not a little bit more so. So it forces you to be up. My reservation with competitions, there's no feedback, there's no evaluations. And I hate that. I absolutely can't stand it, because regardless of winning or losing, I wish there was some sort of growth piece with it. And that's kind of the essence of Toastmasters for me, has been so much about the growth. It would be wonderful if there was some sort of evaluation that came with competitions, where you're able to get feedback and understand what was getting her, what, because how are you supposed to get better?
Sure.
And I've definitely walked away from some of those pretty frustrated, because what I felt I experienced, the speaking I saw was much different, but then there's no feedback, so I don't know how to improve from one to the next.
We're supposed to get that in our clubs. I don't know if you can relate or not, but it's hard to give the same speech over and over for the feedback in the clubs. You want to mix it up. And that's a good point. I guess if you got a trophy, you did well
Yeah, and I
in
think
the
that
contest.
I think it's one of those things that it would be such a wonderful service to be provided, that if you're speaking at that high of a level, to be able to get feedback about where you shined and where you were maybe a little dimmer at that level too,
Sure.
right? Because I think people who, a lot of those competitions, and you've been to many of them, you start to see the same people over and over again. So there's obviously
Yes.
there's a group of people who are very focused and talented and wanting to do and participate in the competitions. And I do feel there's a missed opportunity on our part to be able to have a separate time, even if it's not officially part of the Toastmasters thing. If it's a 20-minute after fact, right, where a group of people who stay afterwards and say, hey, anybody who wants feedback about their speech, come back
I get
over.
that.
I know Grace has been such a sweetheart many a
Yep.
times. Grace Rocco has been such a sweetheart many a times, because I've talked to her afterwards of just what happened, what's going on, and she's such a good diplomat. Gives the kind of
Yeah.
vague, well, the judges may see this, the judges may see that, but for, I think, for me personally and the rate of growth I want to have, it goes back to just a club level. What's a good evaluation? Is a good evaluation is where you get tangible pieces to help you grow. And
Sure.
I wish that the competitions could evolve to include that, especially at the district levels and the preceding the ones before that.
Sure. Maybe the evaluation contest should be part of that international
Yeah,
contest.
yeah.
And there's your feedback. That's a
Wouldn't that be
very good
cool though?
point.
But wouldn't
It
that
would
be
be
cool though?
cool. And we
Right?
can almost redefine things, but there are a certain structure, those
Yeah.
special international ones. So that I know a little bit about your background, where you're from, what brought you to where you are in your life today.
Yeah, I grew up in Northern California, moved to Southern for school, and fell in love with it. I remember sitting at my graduation at UCSB,
Yeah,
and everybody was talking about having how much they loved it here and how they're going to have to move home because it's so expensive. And that was pre now how much everything's gotten really, really expensive. But I remember looking around at the ocean mountains and thinking, man, where would I want to go other than here?
sure.
I, so I would say I'm a classic introvert in many ways, and Toastmasters was a vehicle for me to kind of pull myself out of that shell. I'm great with one-on-one with people. I struggle in groups. Now I can go and speak on stage. I can run my own workshops. I can do just be on fire with that. But you take me into a room of complete strangers, and I still have that panic stranger danger. And you'll see me hovering around the cocktail section in the back, trying to sip up liquid courage as fast as possible until somebody comes over to me and initiates conversation. It's like that person who has that heart that just beats for the people who they can tell are uncomfortable and awkward, and that's always me. So those people, if you're one of those watching this, just know that you're deeply appreciated and you make folks like me life so much easier.
We need you. We need you.
Yeah, yeah,
No, I deeply appreciate that. You mentioned Grace earlier. She's been a big support of mine and so many other people, and
yeah,
diplomatically wise, and that's a whole different skill. A lot of us still need to work on.
yes. She
All
she
right,
she excels at that.
so let's tell me what division you're in, which clubs that you represent, and some words of wisdom for those out there who want to learn a little bit more about you and Toastmasters and how it can help your life.
Yeah, White
All
Hatters is
that.
yeah, White Hatters has been home for me for quite some time. It changed a little bit in these last couple years when everything went virtual. I had kind of backed out of the virtual because I was zooming so much, I was zoomed out. And I'm really wanting to get back into going to some in-person clubs. So I've been shopping around at looking at some in-person ones that I could attend, switch it up a little bit. Words of wisdom, gosh, you it's funny because I think when you think Toastmasters initially, you think prepping for the work presentation, getting ready for the father of the bride speech, feeling a little bit more confident in standing in front of your boardroom, being able to work on the school project. Maybe some of you are going to want to do, professional speaking as a vocation. But where I think that, and I would encourage most to really consider is if you think of any sort of difficult conversation you've ever had with a significant other, how much could it have been lessened in the severity if one or both of you had practiced communicating enough to the point where you were comfortable just pausing in between what you said? Meaning that in the midst of conversation, in the midst of the emotional stirring that sometimes happens in coupledom, if both of you are comfortable enough in your communication where you could pause, take a breath, and think about what you're about to say, what would it have changed in that dynamic? And that's where I really think that something like Toastmasters is so powerful is it's the day-to-day interactions, it's the everyday communications, the things that we all do each and every moment of our lives where it can serve us so powerfully. Yes, it will help you become a better presenter. Yes, it will help you get prepped to do an awesome Father of the Bride speech. Yes, it will help you become more competent in front of the boardroom. Yes, if you're one of those small percentage of people who want to go on and do keynotes and workshops and seminars like I've done, it can do that. Yes, it can help you prep for a TED Talk. And more than that, it will help you simplify the day-to-day communications that you interact with in everyday life and help make them better. And that's talking about communications with your friends, your family, your partners, your children, the person who's crossing the street who annoys you just a little bit. I think that's where there's a real incredible opportunity for us to appreciate and why it's so important for us to acquire these kinds of skills, because the more competent and comfortable we can be with it, gosh, the more competent and comfortable we can all be with our communication styles.
Sure.
Imagine what some of our public dialogues might evolve into. And I think when we don't have that, they might de-evolve as we've seen play out quite a bit the last few years.
We do, and that's funny. Communication can make our life just a little bit better.
Yeah,
Proper communication, and number one is listening. Obviously, as we go on and getting proper feedback. Well,
yes,
thank you very much, Jesse. Deeply appreciate it. I understand those in-person meetings. I actually belong to two clubs in Santa Barbara. It takes me almost an hour to drive there, but I go because I have a different dynamic, and obviously I'm from Division D, and D and E used to be combined together, so I do the travel back and forth quite a bit. But we all need a little something, something, and we get a little different piece from the different clubs and organizations. So
yeah.
deeply appreciate what you're doing out there. We look forward to seeing you compete, and then I'm going to compete too every chance I get, and maybe we'll compete against each other. But it's going to
I'm
be a
looking
lot of
forward to it,
fun.
Joseph.
Me too. Well, thanks, Jesse. We appreciate you, and District 33 appreciates you. And hey, life is good. So thank you once again, kind sir.
You bet, buddy. Great to see you.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
And that was Jesse Brisendine. Please look out for him, part of our District 33 family. And we're all family. We all have different backgrounds and experiences. And more importantly, we're all developing something similar, a little bit of communication, a little bit of leadership, and more importantly, friendship. So thank you once again, Jess.
Catch us.